Factorem, it's the five words for a manufacturing compiler for hardware engineers. We're making hardware less hard for engineers by providing them a one-stop shop to custom manufacturing, which is the bread and butter for a lot of engineers that are creating new products. If you were to go back in time, say 20, 30 years, um, hardware was a problem, but not as bad of a problem because let's say you were a car company, you would come up with an automotive, with a flagship car, and it would be the flagship car for 5 or 10 years. But today, every 6 months, that has to change. And so hardware is evolving faster and faster. And to keep up with that, there need to be software tools like Factorem that can assist the team to get their prototypes faster, and when they're ready for production, for them to get to production faster. So what we do is provide a live platform for them to securely upload their designs, get instant quotations, even though they're never before seen, rather than waiting days or even weeks to get that back. Have the platform decide the best manufacturer for them, distribute their orders to the best manufacturers. And for the manufacturers who are small mom and pop shops, they have a job board with jobs qualified based on their capabilities. They take on the jobs, get it manufactured, leave it at their doorstep. We consolidate and ship it to the client's doorstep. So it's an end-to-end fulfillment platform that enables any hardware engineer to have their parts made and delivered with quality and on time every time.
So let's start first, right, Hardik? I wanted to ask you, what was the biggest moment for you that like, hey, no, you know what, I want to start something of my own.
Yeah, so quick intro, I'm Hardik. I run Factorem. I oversee product and technology. My co-founder oversees more of business, finance, operations. Both of us are first-time founders. That said, we've worked at a number of startups before. In fact, my co-founders worked at 7 startups before this. And for me, it's been a mixed background. So I've worked at corporate, I've tried out government, I got to try out startups and also SMEs. I think the two key moments from all of that pointed us this way. The first was my very first proper startup experience. This was at NUS in the NOC program. I was working for a quantum hardware startup, and it was just two co-founders and I. And these guys were quantum scientists, super nerds with 3 MBAs and a PhD. They're really smart, but sorry, I said 3 MBAs. I meant 3 master's degrees, none of which were MBAs, and yet they were figuring out how to build a business. They even managed to get into YC, and so we moved to the Bay Area, and I got to see them journey through that. When I had gone into this startup, I used to think founders were superhumans with golden blood or crazy willpower. But seeing them figure things out by being humble about the things that they don't know and being knowledgeable about the areas where they're confident, they're experts, to get through building the business showed me how doable it was. It was more about the passion they had or their expertise that was pushing them forward. Everything else they didn't know, they were okay not knowing and even just Googling to figure out the solution. And that had to be their mindset throughout the year I was with them. And I'm sure today it's still their mindset. The second moment was when I was doing my first full-time job, and it was a corporate job. I was actually bonded to this organization. And I think after the first year of working there, they give you this performance appraisal where your boss sits down, tells you all the things you did well, all the things you could improve, and then presents you a scorecard with a number on it. And the scorecard is out of 5. And I think she circled 3. And it's not that it was 3 that was the problem. It was that transition from, I don't know, 15 years of education where you're getting a scorecard at the end of every semester to now adulthood where you're still getting scorecards felt very off. Yeah, that was a part of corporate life I didn't like. Everything else, I think the team I was working for and that organization was really good. It, in fact, helped me train my technical mind even further. But then this whole bit where they have to score us, and I can understand why they have to do it, didn't sit well. So I think those were the 2 main triggers. There were a ton of others, but those were the 2 main ones I can think of that got me started into the startup journey.
Yeah, it's definitely like this because as like startup founders ourselves also, it's like there are many things that we don't really know as well, like jumping into this. It's like you have to, because in like a typical corporate life, like there are many people taking care of like the different aspects. So like there's a finance department, there's like a R&D department, there's the manufacturing department. So but like as a startup, it's like you're just two humans jumping in onto a ship and yeah, making sure that you reach the end of your journey. Yeah. So how has it been for you so far? So like your journey, how has your journey been so far?
I I would say if it's one word, I would say rewarding.
Mm.
It is. I think I've always been of this belief, and I thought some wise men had this quote, but I don't know who said this. It's been in my mind. Maybe I'm the wise man. The quote has been, "It's through the hard times that we grow," and I've always had this in my mind. I'm not sure where it came from, and I strongly believe in that. And I think, yeah, the entrepreneurship journey really pushes you through a lot of
Mm.
hardships. I mean, everybody goes through hardships in whatever careers they go through, but in a startup, it's at high intensity. It is beyond what's explainable using words, and getting through that really shapes you to be more resilient against um, things outside the startup world. So I think that's been rewarding. I've learned a lot through the journey, gotten to meet a lot of great people, gotten to work with a lot of great people as well, and still getting to meet very interesting people like you guys.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely that's a very interesting quote right there, because it's like, yeah, it's like you're not really working for like a fixed pay, like especially at the start, it's like you don't have um in a sense like what the typical corporate lifestyle will give you, like a fixed pay at the end of each month, just do the task that maybe your manager has assigned to you. But in like a startup, it's really very dynamic. You have 1,001 things to do and like not enough hands and minds to work on it at the same time. So then in that sense, right, uh throughout your journey itself, right, was there any like maybe share like a few moments of like fear or burnout maybe that you have experienced while doing like maybe the early stages of your startup? And like what were the things that had kept you going?
Mm. Yeah, this is a very relevant question. These are
Mm.
things you know theoretically going in, but when you experience them practically, they hit you like a wall.
Mm.
Uh, Fear was when I left my corporate job to get into startups. So my company, Factorem, full time. And I've been doing Factorem at the side for almost a year and a half while trying to juggle the corporate job. So I knew what I was getting into, or at least in theory. But then moving from a Fortune 500 company, from an infinite runway where my job was to just show up from 9 to 5, to a company where there was no guideline on what time work even starts and has a 6 month runway. And that felt really that imposter syndrome was really strong there. What are you doing? This is so unintuitive. It's illogical. Um, what would yeah, and it doesn't help that people around you and they all they care for you, which is why they say, "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you feeling itchy?" Which is why you're going into this. I remember my mom saying, "You're an engineer, not a businessman. I think you should go back to a salaried job." So then, yeah, that doesn't help um, as well. So, but what kept me going was that we had users, with people coming in, day out, using the product we had built, and it was solving a real problem. And if that was not there in the equation, I would not have taken the leap. And I think at times since then, we've had plenty of instances where we have people that we think are key team members that might want to move on, or runways that are just less than a month, tons of investors saying no. A lot of reasons to quit. The reasons why we didn't was because there were real users who said we're solving a real problem. Even at times when the product was shitty or buggy, it was still solving a problem for them by manual help we provide them. And so that kept us going. And I think even till now that stays the principle for why we keep going.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a very common trope amongst like all the startup founders. It's like especially when we ask them like, oh, so like what did your family or friends think about it? Yeah, a lot of them gave like the same answers. Or like my parents were saying that, oh, why are you giving up maybe a cushy job to maybe go through hardship in a startup? Or those who are like like us, we came out straight from uni and we dived straight into this. And all of our friends were questioning our decisions like, whoa, you already gotten your degree, so like why are you, doing like a startup? Isn't it easier if you just join like a interview than join the corporate life where you're guaranteed like benefits, you're getting like a fixed pay every month. You don't have to worry about like, oh, what's gonna happen the next week, what will happen the next week or the next month. And yeah, I think it really is. Yeah, and the exact same thing came up. Everyone got very motivated, especially when they saw that the results were coming in, that they were making an impact on people's lives, be it depending whether depends on like which industry they're in. So if they are in like a socialpreneur, they are seeing like the lives of the people that they're impacting. And for people like yourself, you see like there are users that have a problem, and then your solution is, in a sense, helping them a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I want to jump in here to also ask, right? How do you identify the problem? And then what was your POC story? That's actually a question that I have. Like, how do you identify a problem, and then what kind of proof of concept you came with, and you were like, oh, okay, yeah, it's like this. This is a painful problem. Let's go for it.
Mm. Yeah, we can definitely dive into this. I think for both my co-founder and I, the problem was experienced firsthand. We were on the buyer side of what we have as the marketplace today. For me, I was working and I've been an engineer, so theoretically, this problem is something that I've known, and in school we're taught is solved a certain way. And problem is getting hardware made is tough. So, are both of you software engineers, or either of you software engineers?
Yeah, I'm the software engineer here.
Okay, so you know what a compiler is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for Tedman, a compiler is when you code and then you wanna see whether the code works. You execute or you play, and the code runs. The compiler runs through the code, understands what you're trying to do, and creates the product. And then you see if it works or not. If it doesn't work, then you change your code again and you recompile. It's amazing. You don't even think about it. Some software engineers might even forget what a compiler is because it's so seamless. But for hardware guys,
I agree.
yeah, for hardware guys, the compiler looks like this. You've designed the product, it's a 3D design, and there's 200 components on average per hardware product. You know your customers will love it, you've done your simulations, it all works well, and now you need to compile. And compiling means calling a ton of suppliers, typically 5 to 30 suppliers, getting them to look at your designs, hoping that they don't leak your IP. They understand every single intricate detail you've put in. They get the tolerances right, the color right. They deliver on time, and they do it at a price point that makes sense for you. They're not trying to rip you off. And fortunately, let's say you found that and it's compiling, it's being manufactured. There's a bunch of questions you might be asked along the way because your requirements weren't clear at the beginning. Price might change. It gets delivered. It's about to get delivered to you. 99% compilation, and the product comes out wrong. They made a mistake because this is custom. No one's seen it before. They made a mistake, and now you recompile again, and you recompile. You get it delivered. The product is done right. You actually assemble it and see it in person. Now you need to iterate, just like the developer who needed to recode. Now you need to iterate. So you go through the process again. That compiler for hardware guys takes 2 to 3 months, and it doesn't make sense why hardware guys get paid half of software guys. It shouldn't be. If you're gonna work this hard, you should be getting paid more. If you're getting paid half because the economics of hardware are as such, then the problem should be lesser. So I don't think hardware guys will end up getting paid more because the economics really don't make sense. But we can definitely make their life easier. And so that was the problem that I experienced as a hardware engineer, both at my quantum hardware startup as well as a few experiences beyond that. And for my co-founder, she was the only non-engineer in a 16-man engineering startup where she worked day in, day out with this really talented engineers on a team. That company has gone on to IPO today. And she would see them calling more than 20 different suppliers every single day, discussing why the shade of black came out wrong, why the tolerance does not fit, and a ton of questions that are not a good use of their talent. Today, a lot of companies use junior engineers to do this, not a good use of their talent. So in a world of Ubers and Amazons, it didn't make sense for her not to have a solution like Factorem that can solve this problem for hardware engineers. And that's how we got started.
Nice. I
Oh, that's
mean,
quite
that's a
interesting because I never thought about like the hardware side of things, especially as a software engineer. We we usually don't see how much effort goes into um, the prototyping on the hardware side, as opposed to like software engineers. I mean, at least in today's market, they get paid a lot. Some might say there's even like an oversaturated market, especially after AI and everything. But I feel that um, hardware is. I mean, this might lead to a good question, right? Do you think that hardware side of things can be automated as easily as software is kind of being like automated, at least for prototypes using AI? What do you see is the future over there?
So is a key point here using AI, or is a key point just in general, is it as automatable as software?
The key point is like maybe we can get into both. Like first is like how much of it can be automated, and
Mm,
number two is like with let's not say AI, but with the rise of large language models, is the how is the industry changed?
mm, yeah, I think as we got into this journey, we've met plenty of industry veterans. These are 60, 70-year-old men who've understood this industry deeply by working it day in, day out. So many of them have told us they've thought of this idea before. Uh, it's not a very tough idea. It needs to be solved. Hardware is around longer than software did, but why was it never solved? It was because the answer to your first question, is it possible to automate? It was not possible to automate. It's too complex and requires humans to connect the dots. But these humans are also the weakest link in manufacturing supply chains or any supply chain for that matter, because humans are error prone, and a single error in a supply chain would amplify and affect the other nodes across the network. For example, if your manufacturer misses a tolerance, now your product does not get built.
mm,
Your product doesn't get shipped to the client who's gonna install your product into their product, and then their consumer does not get a part on time. And so it's just because of one guy. So a lot of people have tried to remove humans from the loop, but it's been difficult. And then now enter AI, enter LLMs. That's been amazing. And honestly, some of it, I didn't see it coming when we started. We started in 2020. There's a bunch of stuff that we were leaning on AI for, stuff that could not have been done 10, 20 years ago, such as using statistical AI to do instant pricing, where we use historical order data to train models to price brand new designs. So typically it takes 3 days to a week to price a custom design. You have to understand engineering costs, complexities, material. But with Factorem, we do it in less than 3 seconds. Today, we do this for 60% of all orders. The remaining 40%, the system's still learning because there's a lot of complexities to account for. We support more than 200 materials, 30 different surface finishes, 3 different key manufacturing technologies. So with time, it will cover more. But then there were still manual entry points when it came to pricing. A customer that would have 200 different components would have to come to our platform and toggle and decide one by one what is the material that you want, what is the finish you want. And imagine doing this for 200 parts. And they would, because they're getting instant prices and they would check out. But one of the things we managed to do as soon as LLMs became technology that was accessible is we can now read their technical drawings, which come in all forms, typically PDFs, but they could be handwritten, computerized. We call this unstructured data. We're able to contextualize it and get structured data out, such as the material they need, the tolerance they're looking for, and confidently apply it to the platform, which gives them an even more accurate pricing, avoids human mistakes when it comes to the setting up of these parts, and they check out. So it's almost one click. And that's just the beginning. So it's just the information extraction part. Now we're looking into projects where we're doing supplier liaising with agentic AI, where we have agents representing Factorem for various needs. And we're looking into installing agents that represent each of our suppliers. Today, we work with more than 150 factories across Southeast Asia. And traditionally, you would have to call them or talk to them via email.
mm.
And it's every time you email somebody or WhatsApp them, it will take minutes or if not hours to get back. But with agentic AI, we're able to train models that understand what suppliers can and cannot do and talk to them and instantly get replies in order to quickly close orders on our side, improve deal flow on our end, and pass it on to suppliers as well. So all this is still new. I think definitely in a few months from now, we'll realize the potential of it. And so, in short, in the past, it was not automatable. Today, it is a lot more. But we're also being realist. We're also adding some realism there. We cannot automate 100% when it comes to manufacturing because there's always orders that will be highly complex or of high value. At that point, it makes sense to have a human being to do that compilation. Imagine if a compilation was today, a compilation based on server power, maybe you're spending, I don't know, 0.1 cent. That's why it's automated. But imagine if it was $15,000 to compile. Would you rather have it happen automatically, or would you prefer to have a human being in the loop? And there's not many things online that people would pay for without speaking to a human that's more than $10,000. Maybe you could buy a Tesla, but nothing else without speaking to a human being. So when it goes above a certain limit, it makes sense to have human beings, and we think that'll be 20% of all orders. And the cost of having that human being would offset the cost of will be offset by the cost of the order itself. So our end target is to automate 80% and then leave the rest to capable humans that have assistive tools to see the orders through.
Wow, actually, I'm quite impressed how fast you all have adopted agentic AI. Actually, I think that's like a huge feat in a sense that, uh, from my understanding, at least, like most organizations, they try to like play around with at least with agentic AI at this stage, and then rarely something deployable comes out. If you get what I mean, because at the end of the day, it's not a deterministic system, right? It can go either way. It's probabilistic. So how do you actually navigate that challenge? That, like, actually, what's your top consideration, right? Then for your company as well as to like other founders who are trying to implement agentic AI, right? Then what do you look for before you can say like, all right, I think this is okay to test enough in production, or at least it's okay enough to show some on the client side, basically, right? What was your internal like metric for it, or like at least like your thought process, and what do you advise founders who are trying to like implement like these kind of agentic systems right now into their solutions?
I think when assessing the use of agentic AI internally, it's always a problem first approach. What is the problem we're solving, and is it big enough to be worked on? Because there's a ton of stuff you can do. You could solve something that's probably only taking up 5 minutes of somebody's time a month. Then it's not worth going in. So we figure out what the biggest challenges are, and then target them with this. And the reason why we're able to do this is also, unlike the large organizations, we're a startup, and the strength of the startup is you're nimble, and you can also get away with making mistakes. Where our users, who are early adopters, they understand that they understand the way we operate. They understand that we're continually innovating to find the best fit in order to improve the experience for them. That's the profile of users we have today. If a user's coming in saying, "Oh, I really need a really great product that's perfect, and I cannot accept any downtime or mistakes," then they would not have come to us. They would probably still stick to the traditional route of doing things, where they operate with high margin contract manufacturers that are made up of entirely human teams that manage it with Excel sheets, because it works, but they need that stability, so they're okay paying that. So that's something we have as a startup. We're nimble, and our users are more forgiving, which allows us to have a lower threshold for us to be releasing new features that are, like you said, risky in a sense where it's probabilistic rather than deterministic.
So are there any failures, right, that you had experienced throughout your startup journey, right? But in a sense, you may be weirdly proud about? I won't say failures, like
Let me,
maybe you
yeah,
made like mistakes, or like something that when you look back upon is like, you know, actually that is something that changed like the whole trajectory, or maybe like made a big impact in the startup.
okay, I have an interesting one for this. To the point, so interesting that there's an article written on it by Tech in Asia of how we made a mistake. And the recent Forbes thing, I was asking the scout how they found out about us. Because it's not like we applied, it's just it happened. And he said he read this article about how a company almost made a fatal mistake, or how a startup almost made a fatal mistake. And it's about a failure that Factorem almost had. Yeah, and so that's how we got scouted. So I guess that worked out well for the founders, yes, but also for the company in a sense where it gave investors confidence on what we were doing and why. So the context to this is we're a tech company, right? And typically when you think tech, you think a ton of IP, you think patents. When you think IP, you think patents. And knowing what I knew back then, and I came from the semiconductor industry as well, where it's all about patenting. You go to any director's office, there's like 10 patent cards posted across their walls. And so I had a patent written out for our instant pricing engine. We call it internally the price predictor engine, which takes a never before seen 3D design and technical drawing, extracts more than 85 parameters, and provides a committed quotations in less than 3 seconds. Patented, patented because it was novel, the way we had built it, and patented because it would give investors strength in our technology to let them know that when they invest in us, they're investing in this tech that nobody else can have, and we're gonna make good money for them from it. I drafted it all out. In fact, in my last year in uni, I had taken on a patent course. I think it was one of my only A pluses in uni because the professor thought I was really hardworking, but in reality, I was just using the course to get him to freely consult me on the patent draft because he's a patent expert. And so I had it consulted via him, and it was good to go and that was the mistake. So the mistake was patenting the software we had was not the right move. And it was IPOS Singapore, which is the Singaporean patent or IP protection body that advised us on this when I first filed the patent. So they took a look at it and they're like, this is off. You should go speak to our consultants. And so we spoke to our consultants, and after they studied what we do, they told us this. They said, you typically patent things that are easy to replicate, right? They're novel, yes, but once you give it to a customer, for example, they could reverse engineer it and they could copy you. And you want to prevent that. So you prevent them by patenting it. But if what you have built is a black box that cannot be reverse engineered, then there is no point patenting because the main purpose of patenting is not to show off or to give anybody confidence. It's mainly to protect your IP. And what we had built as the instant price engine is a black box. Today, Shoaib or Tedman, you can go into our platform, upload a 3D design and get a quotation. And you could do this 100 times and you'll still not know how the pricing comes about. That's our black box. Patenting it would now be showing the world our hand to let them see what our cards are, how we coded it. And then they could go ahead and use that as learnings to build their own engine. And by the very nature of it, it's a black box. So it's very hard to police whether they copied you. And when they tell you this, it's so obvious. And I think throughout a lot of our journey, we hear all these things which are so obvious on hindsight, but when doing it, we don't know, which is why it's important to continue talking to as many people throughout the journey. And so, that was almost a failure. It's gotten us a lot of great media. Any publicity is good publicity, and has helped us stay open to hearing opinions from everyone as we go along, especially if they are better experts in it than we are.
Yeah, because this, I think that's something that really a lot of people think is like, oh, I got this groundbreaking technology. I have something very new, so I will patent it so that no one else would, in a sense, be able to create it. But but when you patent something, right, then it's like the designs and everything are also in a sense publicly available. So no one can, like anyone can access it, but no one can copy it directly. So I think that's like, but that's the true thing. It's like when you say it, right, it's like something very obvious. But I would say that even if I was in your shoes, right, I would have thought that it would have been a great idea. Yeah. But yeah.
Spent a lot of hours drafting that out, thinking it was a great idea. I still have it sitting on my computer, never published.
to remind you of remind you of the time that you almost made like this mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then. Mm, okay. Then what about something maybe a little bit more general? Like, what would you say that is one of the most important lessons that every startup founder should learn before they dive into like the or like aspiring startup founders dive into this world of startups?
I think having done this for 4 years, nearly 5 years, one thing that stayed consistent is
Mm,
to be sure that you're solving a real problem. Because if you're going in from the angle of, oh, I have a solution and now let me see who it can solve a problem for, it's not impossible, but it's really hard. And especially if you're going to be doing this for a long time, the long haul, you'll be likely to give up. And I'm of the thinking that's the biggest reason why startups fail. It's not because you run out of money or you cannot hire the right people or you can't fundraise. It's you give up. You give up too soon. And you will give up if you realize you're not solving a real problem. But if you're solving a problem that's real and you feel for the problem, then you can go a long way. That's it. There are plenty of startup ideas that you can build that don't need 5 years. You could figure out a way to exit in 18 months, build a dev tool that the world needs, like Cursor, and go from 0 to 100 million in 12 months, and then pass it on to somebody. You could do that. So, but those are rare. But at the same time, those get talked about the most, and they get talked about the most because they are rare.
mm,
Majority of startups, yeah, it's a long haul. It's a marathon that's going to take a decade. It's 1/10 of your life, provided you live 100 years, which is hopefully going to be true. But
mm,
yeah, it's a lot to give in. And so, yeah, my advice to anybody looking to start is be sure of the problem that you're solving, validate that enough people are feeling it, and make sure you write down why you're feeling that problem as well, because that's what you'll be referring to again and again, especially during the periods where you don't have users yet to tell you about how you're solving a problem. So then the conviction comes from what you've written down here. And then the conviction can slightly become easier to have because users are telling you what you knew to be true.
Hardik, is there like a pivot story under Factorem? Maybe like some product pivot or like some business idea pivot, or like was there a time where like you got some feedback from the market or the external one, you were like it was like a click that like, hey, this is what we should be doing, you know, and then you pivot this certain.
Mm. I think surprisingly for Factorem's journey so far, there have been zero major pivots. And I really hope it's not because we've not been reflecting on what we do. And I hope that it's been because miraculously we got it right the first time. It's just been about improving the way we deliver the product in order for us to grow. So that has been the main gist of things. So we've not majorly pivoted. Recent times though, we've been looking into it, but not as a pivot, but more as creating secondary revenue streams, such as licensing out the pricing engine that we talked about earlier, where instead of using our data to price our customers, we can swap out to a supplier's data and have the supplier get an instant pricing tool for their customers and make some recurring revenue at the side for ourselves. So yeah, sorry to disappoint you. I don't have any juicy pivot stories.
But it's okay. It's also quite juicy that like in a sense that like you've been. But I also think that like in stories where like the founder has already been in the industry, pivots are actually not so common. That's another thing that I've noticed, that like if you come out from your own industry and then you do something because you already have a problem that you faced yourself, I think that's also quite crucial. And I think in your case, both you and like even like your founder had this problem to a certain extent. So I think
Mm.
that really helps in the case. But yeah, let's go to the quick fire questions.
All right. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks for the sharing. So, like, I think we will now do some like quick fire questions, some questions to like let the users learn more, like the viewers learn more about you. Okay. So, Hardik, can you share one tool that you cannot live without, especially throughout like your startup journey?
I have two. I hope that's allowed. If not, you can cut one out. One is Google Calendar, but this one if you don't already know, it's great.
Uh,
Everything from working on a startup to even just being a student. Organizes your time. Pair that together with Calendly, which is a calendar booking tool. Pass that out, coordinates time for you, so you don't have to go what time. Share with coordinate what time you're free. The second tool is I'm a very visual person. It's called Lucid Diagrams. Really great. So anytime you're brainstorming processes or even brainstorming how a podcast should go, you find me going into lucid diagrams to draw it out. It's very seamless to use and helps to get the message across, especially when you're working across remote teams.
mm. Very interesting, because every founder has like a tool that they discover throughout their startup journey, and then they swear by it. Like it's like something they wake up to, and every day they use it like multiple times. Okay,
Yeah.
let's do a fun question. Okay, so now to our audience, pitch your startup in like 5 words and no using of any buzzwords.
I wish I had thought this through earlier. Let's let's try it now.
Share your company. The quickest elevator pitch ever.
Manufacturing compiler for hardware engineers.
Oh, not bad. Wow, you actually got it out within like while thinking on your feet. Amazing.
Yeah, let me know if you want to invest.
Wow. Okay. All right, maybe we'll do just one more. What was the weirdest message that your startup has ever gotten, or like maybe for yourself regarding like your startup?
Um, since our interface with externals are usually our platform, which is live 24/7 and available to as a self-serve to the world, maybe I can share the weirdest order we've gotten because
Oh.
we're not very big on social media. The weirdest order, which then led to conversations which were weird as well, was a guy that was trying to manufacture a gun. And he broke it up into 200 different components, and he would upload it. And he got really angry when we said we cannot do it for him. And he went to list out all the customers that we serve. He found all the online sources, said, "How come you can service this big MNCs and uh, startups, but you cannot make these simple parts for me? I'm telling you, it's a toy gun. It's not a real gun." We just said you need a bunch of permissions and all that to get through. And then he kept pursuing us. He kept just emailing us every other day or multiple times a day to request that we do it. Very sus, but yeah, that was pretty weird. So since then, we've built out tools internally that catch parts like this automatically and reject customers so that our team does not have to spend time on this.
Oh my goodness, that is such a juicy story. So some a few members in your team had to vet through like all the designs, and then they realized that these few orders do not really add up. They kind of creating something sus.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's that. Then sometimes it's just super obvious as well. People like this, like the file name is gun.stl and it's a 3D printed gun. So
At least they're
sometimes
making
it's
your
not,
job.
yeah, it's not very hard to catch these.
Yeah, at least you're making your job easier. You don't have to spend like you don't even have to open the file. You pull up the file, the name is already there, and like you can just straight up reject the order.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
guess there's one more thing. This is less technical, but more of something that can happen to any company is we had a guy, it's weird, but it's very commendable. We had a guy walk up to our office, found our address, knocked on our door, and said, "I saw a role open on your careers page. I really love your company and I want to interview for it. I'm here now. Here's my resume." He came all
Ooh.
prepared. Yeah. And this was just late last year. So it's not
Wow.
very long ago as well. It was a bit weird, but this guy was pretty impressive, but we filled the role with somebody else instead. And it was not because he showed up like this. Him showing up helped him get into the interview round because it got me very intrigued.
Yeah, definitely. Having the courage to really like just go down to the office and like interview on the spot and like ask for an interview. I think it shows like quite a bit of character as well. It's like not very easy to be so vulnerable and really just approach like the company and like, oh, I really love this company. I think I'm a good fit for the job, and like just asking for an interview.
Yeah, you really need whack people to grow a company at a founding stage. You cannot have normal people.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's like normal people are more suited for like the corporate life. They need to have a routine. But like in a startup, there is like no such thing. Every day you wake up, there are new things that you have to do. There are new problems that you have to face, and like you really have to be like adaptable.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. I think everybody who's working in a startup at an early stage is on the spectrum somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, so to our audience, how would you ask them to follow like your startup like through like the next step in your journey?
I'd say, yeah, LinkedIn is one. We're trying to get pretty active there. So we post everything from articles that are engineering knowledge to snippets of the actual platform and the users and the user journey. You can also check out this page called careers.factorem.co. Not because we're aggressively hiring, but I think the team has done a good job of highlighting what life is like at Factorem and what our principles are and how we just like to have fun as well. Every 6 months, we like to put the team in a bus, and then we go up to JB and do something fun. So
Oh.
that's an example of stuff that we're up to.
Okay, so to wrap up with one last question, to all the aspiring founders or new founders out there, maybe what is one like sentence of like maybe nugget of information that you would like to share with them?
A nugget of information would be, yeah, agentic AI. It's not a hype. It's gonna help you in so many ways. So definitely don't turn a blind eye to it. And I think this is one of those things where instead of having your engineers figure out how it works, take on a course, maybe 3 hours, understand it, at least from a management level as a start before you start getting technical with it. Do a project with it as well, because it's going to be reality of what the world's going to be like, at least for the next 2 to 3 years before the next AI frontier comes up.
All right. Thank you so much, Hardik, for sharing all this information with our like audience. Yeah, definitely do keep a lookout for like what Factorium will be doing up next in the next few months. And yeah.